Good morning, good morning. We're back. Oh my goodness, it's been forever since I've done a Philosophy Friday, but I'm so excited to be here with you guys and share some awesome philosophy. That's what we do on Philosophy Friday. And what better day of the week than a Friday to allow our minds to drift into the weekend on some new, cool, exciting, different topics. And let's jump right into it. What's up, Jenny? We have got the Darshana, the Yoga Darshana. Darshana means actually sight or vision. But what it connects to in our understanding of philosophy is that these sages have attained a certain level of vision or sight. So in our yogic lineage, there's many philosophers, and it's kind of just part of the job. You know, you could think of it that way. What is philosophy? Let's start there. What is a darshana? What is this sight or vision that they were looking for? Well, I always like to say that philosophy is asking a question that can't be answered. It's trying to find out the more in-depth components to any topic that we might be meditating on or studying the depths behind. And this could start with just the mind itself and understanding the way the mind works and fluctuates and interacts and reacts and all these other things. But then it could also become an understanding of societal influences and how they kind of do the same thing. How their influences affect the citizens and how the citizens affect the society itself and what their role in the society should become. Well, then there's another layer to this philosophical musings, and it goes kind of in that line. It starts with the individual, it becomes more community-based, and then it becomes more cosmically charged. And I like to say that that leads us to cosmic contemplation or divine contemplation. So this is just the reasonings behind why we why we philosophize and what we might be philosophizing towards. And we have a lot of people that we can look to for these topics, for these understandings. You know, it doesn't have to go just down the yogic lineage, but that is a fascinating one to go down. But we can also mention, you know, the Greek philosophers and philosophers from all over the world, the Asian philosophers. So for example, one of my favorites, the Tao Te Ching is, it's written by Lao Tzu, and obviously, you know, the Asian philosophy, you might think it's wildly different from the Indian or the Greek philosophy. And on the surface, yes, it is. They're written in different languages. But when translated, when they can all be unified in that one binding, language, then we're able to study them and find the comparisons, find the similarities, and if there are differences, find in which ways they are different. So now we go from, say, the Asian Tao Te Ching and Lao Tzu, and you know, people like Confucius and these wonderful question askers, to say, let's go to Greece. And we start there with Socrates. You know, he was kind of, well, we don't have to start with him, but he's kind of one of the bedrock philosophers in Greece. He was the teacher of Plato, and Plato later became the teacher of Aristotle. So it was a very cool, you know, lineage there of philosophers in Greece. So what we're talking about now is this darshana, is this philosophical musing that could start, again, at the individual level, how the mind interacts, how it reacts, how we attach. Then it could become the community level, and how the society interacts, how governments interact with the people. And later it can become the cosmic understanding. So back to Greece. We've got Socrates, who actually was a soldier and a warrior for a large portion of his life. You know, this was kind of the norm back then, that if you were needed, you were called, you went. And this was, again, 400, maybe 500 BC. Well, after his career as a soldier, he became kind of someone to be sought out for answers. And we learn from him an amazing way to just approach life and approach problems, an amazing way to become more introspective, less reactive. And this is what he called we call the Socratic method. You see, what Socrates did is he didn't really teach too much. He didn't really sit you down and have you take out a notebook. That wasn't his style. His style was to have you in the moment with him, and as you were asking him questions, Though it may seem wildly frustrating, he would ask you questions back. Not the same question, thank goodness for that, otherwise he would have just been, some random person out in history. But he would ask you pertinent questions to your problem, to your, answers that you seek. And this Socratic method is something really powerful. We can always carry it with us through the day. We can carry it with us onto a yoga mat if that's your preference, or into any physical routine that you go through when the mind starts to wander. The basis of the Socratic method is, again, just to keep asking questions. And the question you might be asking me right now is actually the last question we ask. Why? Why? We want to come to this question of why. That's kind of the basis of all seekers or mumukshus, is to ask why. So after we see Socrates have such an incredible impact on that area of the world and that timeline, then we can see why his students became so important as well. Plato and Aristotle, they wrote his teachings. He didn't write anything. So they actually followed through, wrote his teachings. And this leads us into a more spiritual background of the Buddha. So I'm kind of just weaving these different philosophical musings and teachings together because I thought, what better way to start Philosophy Friday up again with some real hardcore background knowledge. So we get to the Buddha, and the first Buddha is Siddhartha. He, again, just walked and taught. He just walked and taught. He didn't care much about writing anything down, but he had a lot of followers. So when he finally laid to rest, that final time, finding nirvana, that final time, as he said, then they knew it was up to them to pass down the teachings. They knew it was up to them to write these things down and continue his line of reasoning, his line of philosophical musings. One of the most powerful texts, one of the most complete texts that we can see this is done in, is the Dhammapada. And it's just beautiful. It's seeing how you can take these questions that would otherwise become, Socratic in form and very strict and procedural, and made them into almost poetic form. Some of them are poetic, some of them are very short aphorisms, and whichever page you flip open to of the Dhammapada, you're likely to be hit by something quite powerful. So that's the Buddha's teachings, and again, Buddha, the word Buddha, means awakened or enlightened one. And we just went over how Darsana means sight or vision. So the amount of sight or vision that you're going to gain is always going to be directly correlated to the amount of energy you put towards gaining it. So we can also see here how Buddha, becoming the awakened one and gaining that title, it shows he put a lot into it. He didn't just go for a little bit of vision, he went for the whole shebang and found it. That was just Siddhartha, that was the first Buddha, but since him, many, many Buddhas have come and gone, and a lot of them have written, different texts and different aphorisms down, so a lot of very cool philosophical musings to go down there. Let's go to yoga. Let's hit yoga. We haven't even touched on yoga yet, and the text that I'm going to talk about is the Yoga Sutras. This is our bedrock of texts here, though it has been mentioned. Yoga was mentioned before the Yoga Sutras. Patanjali is that sage. He is that philosopher. And what we know as yogis is that this yoga is kind of the combination of all three of those different philosophical musings. It starts as the individual, but it's realized as the community. And then the community is realized as the whole, as the source of itself, in a way. So this beautiful line of reasoning is called Samkhya philosophy, Samkhya Darshana. And we find that in Patanjali's sutras, what he does is he takes that very dense and convoluted yoga darshana, the Samkhya Darshana, and he breaks it down into a step-by-step, very procedural practice that can be enjoyed by anyone at any time. He starts with the first chapter, just giving the understanding of what the goal is. That's how important it is. Then the second chapter is the Sadhana-pada. It's the actual practice, how you do it, what to do, when to do it, where to do it, and that leads to the the goals, or the attainments, the attainments are the third chapter. The third chapter, the Vibhuti-pada, is basically the abilities of the yogi, what you're able to be gained. Not just, the peace of mind, the non-reactions, but also these more mystical attainments that are spoken of. Really beautiful stuff. The fourth chapter is the Kavalya-pada, which means to be liberated, to liberate the individual spark, the individual consciousness, and again, a lot of other dense and convoluted topics. Like one of these topics would have to become an entire one of these Philosophy Friday topics. So I'm really excited to go forward with you guys and share all this fascinating knowledge in our lineage, in the Buddhist lineage, in the Asian lineages, in the Greek, line of reasonings and questionings of Socratic method. It's all connected. There's even some Toltec, wisdom that's been passed down, and all of these things end up connecting. I wonder why that is. If we're all asking the same questions, we're all going down these same, musings or contemplating the same topics, then eventually, I think we might all be talking about the same thing. I'm not gonna go too far into that yet, but I just want to throw that out there. And it's pretty fascinating. It really is, that no matter where in the world these gentlemen were or women were, we have some incredible topics to dig into. Now this lends very, very well to the seeker component of the yogi's soul. There's always this itch for more knowledge, itch for more wisdom. And we can even look to the more recent philosophers, someone like Alan Watts or any one of the spiritual guides that doesn't make it more about the dogma, but makes it more about the spirit. That becomes very powerful too. So I am so looking forward to sharing all of this with you guys, to moving through in, like I always try to do, in a sequential way, in a logical way. And I'm just so happy to be back to share this with you guys. I hope you enjoyed the first installation of Philosophy Friday. It's been awesome. Remember, tell your friends, join every Friday. I have classes on Zoom, classes at the beach in South Florida at Hollywood Beach. We have a teacher training coming up. We're going to have big plans when all of this craziness is over. So stay tuned. Thank you guys so much for joining this morning. I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful day, a beautiful weekend. From the bottom of my soul to yours, namaste.